Crossing the Bar, by Alfred Lord Tennyson, is a poem about the transition from life to death. The poet uses the metaphor of a sea voyage to represent this journey. Tennyson wrote this poem in his later years. The poet thinks about his own mortality and the inevitability of death. The speaker, who is likely Tennyson himself, describes various elements of the sea and the sky to convey his thoughts and feelings about death. He emphasizes that he does not want others to mourn for him when he dies. He hopes to meet his pilot after crossing the bar, which is a metaphor for crossing from life into the afterlife. Explanation of the poem Crossing the Bar by Alfred Lord Tennyson. The poem opens with a description of the sunset and the evening star. The sunset symbolizes the end of the day. The evening star is Venus that marks the transition from day to night. This imagery sets the stage for the speaker's reflection on the end of life. The speaker hears a clear call, which suggests he feels a summons to begin his final journey. He hopes that there will be no moaning of the bar when he sets out to sea. The bar here represents a sandbar, a physical barrier that separates the open sea from the shore. Metaphorically, it symbolizes the boundary between life and death. The speaker's wish for no mourning indicates his desire for a peaceful and untroubled departure from life. In the second stanza, the speaker describes a tide that seems asleep, which means it is calm and still. This tide is too full for sound and foam, suggesting it is deep and quiet. This calm tide represents a peaceful transition into death. The speaker refers to something that drew from out the boundless deep and now turns again home. This can be interpreted as the soul, which came from the infinite depths of existence, and is now returning to its origin. The calmness and stillness of the tide imply a serene and untroubled journey towards the afterlife. The third stanza continues with the imagery of twilight and the evening bell. Twilight is the time between day and night. It symbolizes the transition from life to death. The evening bell can be associated with a funeral bell and reinforces the theme of death. The speaker mentions the dark that follows the evening bell, which signifies the unknown realm of death. He reiterates his wish for no sadness or mourning when he embarks on his final journey. The term embark aligns with the nautical metaphor and suggests that death is like setting off on a new adventure. In the final stanza, the speaker acknowledges that he will be taken far from our bourne of time and place. The word bourne means boundary, and here it refers to the limits of human existence. The speaker understands that the flood, or the tide, will carry him far away from the familiar world of time and place. Despite this, he expresses hope to meet his pilot face to face when he has crossed the bar. The pilot is a metaphor for a guiding presence in the afterlife. It could be interpreted as God, the Grim Reaper, or another mythological figure who helps souls transition to the afterlife. The speaker's hope to meet the pilot indicates his desire for guidance and reassurance in the afterlife. Themes of the poem Crossing the Bar by Alfred Lord Tennyson. The central theme of Crossing the Bar is death. The poem explores the speaker's acceptance of death and his hope for a peaceful transition. Throughout the poem, death is depicted as a natural and inevitable part of life, and the speaker's calm demeanour reflects his acceptance of this fact. Time is another important theme in the poem. The imagery of the setting sun and twilight represents the passage of time and the end of life. The speaker's journey from life to death is portrayed as a natural progression, much like the transition from day to night. The sea is a metaphor for the journey from life to death. The calm and deep tide symbolizes a peaceful transition, and the voyage represents the speaker's final journey. The sea's vastness and mystery mirror the unknown nature of the afterlife. Literary devices of the poem Crossing the Bar by Alfred Lord Tennyson. The entire poem is built around the extended metaphor of a sea voyage. The bar represents the boundary between life and death, and crossing it symbolizes passing into the afterlife. The pilot is another metaphor, representing a guiding presence in the afterlife. Alliteration is used to create a musical quality in the poem. For example, clear called in the first stanza, and face to face in the final stanza. This repetition of consonant sounds adds to the poem's rhythm and flow. Enjambment occurs when a line of poetry continues without a pause into the next line. For instance, the transition between lines 3 and 4 in the second stanza. Enjambment helps to maintain the poem's fluidity and enhances its contemplative tone. Tennyson uses vivid imagery to create a serene and peaceful atmosphere. The descriptions of the sunset, evening star, calm tide, and twilight help to convey the speaker's acceptance of death and his hope for a tranquil journey. Structure of the poem Crossing the Bar by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Crossing the Bar consists of 4 stanzas, each containing 4 lines, known as quatrains. The rhyme scheme follows a consistent ABAB pattern, which contributes to the poem's rhythmic quality. The lengths of the lines vary, with the first and third lines generally being longer than the second and fourth. This variation in line length adds visual interest to the poem, and may also reflect the ebb and flow of the ocean. The poem's structure, with its regular rhyme scheme and rhythmic patterns, reinforces the sense of calm and order that the speaker desires in his transition from life to death. The poem is written in free verse, which means it does not follow a specific metrical pattern. However, it maintains a strict ABAB rhyme scheme. Despite the somber subject matter, the mood of the poem is not gloomy. Instead, it is contemplative and serene. The speaker views death as an adventure, a final journey that he approaches with a sense of peace and acceptance. The rhythmic pattern and the use of literary devices help to maintain this tranquil mood throughout the poem. Analysis of the poem Crossing the Bar by Alfred Lord Tennyson. In analyzing Crossing the Bar, it is important to consider the historical and personal context of the poem. Alfred Lord Tennyson wrote this poem in his later years, reflecting his thoughts on mortality and the afterlife. As Britain's poet laureate during much of Queen Victoria's reign, Tennyson was known for his rich imagery and exploration of profound themes. Crossing the Bar is no exception, as it delves into the universal experience of death with grace and sensitivity. The poem's nautical imagery and extended metaphor of a sea voyage make the theme of death more accessible and relatable. The speaker's calm acceptance and hope for a peaceful transition offer a comforting perspective on the often daunting subject of death. The use of literary devices such as alliteration, enjambment, and metaphor enhances the poem's contemplative tone and reinforces its themes. Conclusion of the poem Crossing the Bar by Alfred Lord Tennyson. In conclusion, Crossing the Bar is a poignant and reflective poem that addresses the inevitability of death and the hope for a peaceful transition into the afterlife. Through the use of vivid imagery, an extended metaphor, and various literary devices, Tennyson creates a serene and contemplative mood. The poem's structure and rhythmic patterns further contribute to its calming and ordered presentation and make it a timeless masterpiece.